It's the weekly 30/30 list on the ASX. We're looking at the top 30 momentum companies over the last quarter and the top 30 companies on the launchpad. They're the companies whose momentum has improved the most over the last week. Gary Glover has been through the list and pulled out his favourite charts to run through with us. Good morning, Gary. How are you?
Yeah, I'm great, Chris. Good.
It's good to see, following up from some of the companies you picked out last week and in the Tuesday report, some of them shot out of the gates yesterday on their reporting because it was, I think, the most condensed day of reporting yesterday on the ASX as we are in the throes of reporting season. How's that worked for the charts and the companies that have been picked up this week?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you sort of shouldn't, I know some of the best traders that they don't sort of, not too heavy into reporting season there, but some of the charts were sort of showing their hand early. And yeah, once they reported, they didn't look back. So so it just goes to show. I think I know some of the traders say better stay out of trouble there, but I don't know. I think sometimes if that if it's particularly things about a deep pullback and then they start to go and then it's almost someone will know a few days beforehand or people will know so the price action sometimes will sort of move in beforehand. So I think sometimes you just got to trust yourself. If you've sort of seen this movie before, then you got to sort of follow it. But but looking at the quarterly list there, this is number one here, IPG, the Ipd Group. If I'm not mistaken, Chris, that's 58.01. Is that the highest score for quite some time?
It is. Yeah, you're spot on. That has been. We went through months of terribly low scores, and the top 10s were in the 30s. Sometimes the highest score was 29. So you've absolutely nailed it. This is one of the highest scores we've seen in ages.
Yeah, because it was probably one of the most impressive charts I've seen as well. Like the daily has been really constructive. It's had a few sort of pauses in there, like nice VCP through that sort of September, October. Then a really strong push, a little bit of a breather in there, like a little triangulation there, and then pop through the top again. Almost, might almost show up as a little mini sort of cup and handle if you're looking at your half hourlies and stuff in there, but just really robust price action through here. So, and then the last thing I think we've had a bit of a pause here, and then started to go again. So this is, this might be sort of slightly largest correction there. So that's the only sort of negative there, but. You look at the weekly chart here on that, Chris, that's just a bit of a pause, a bit of a sideways move, isn't it, really? So, I mean, it's just sort of similar to these other impulsive and, corrective, impulsive, corrective, impulsive. They've just gone sideways. No volume through here. The
kind of thing that you say, correction in time, a little bit of price, but mostly a correction in time, is that?
Yeah. Yeah, so look at that. So look at that volume sort of coming, so volume through here, really constructive on the weekly, so pretty solid all the way through here. And then we've gone sideways here. Well, the volume, just
dries right
selling.
up.
Yeah, I mean, the only time we saw any volume was still pretty modest. Was the week of the low here. So this looks really, really strong here. So I saw this yesterday and thought, wow, that's awesome rating. I thought awesome looking chart. Just this is a leader leading here, obviously showing some leadership. So this is definitely one stock we should just be keeping a really, really close eye on this year because it just looks like it's just got leadership qualities all over it. So and the momentum score, I thought, wow, I couldn't remember seeing a score that high for a very long time. So
it's kind of been since the coal companies, which we've been through that for a while. But that report was about 2:00 on Thursday. As you can see, it closed solid on the highs yesterday, and then gapped open. So I mean, you get the early bird report. So.
So look, I might consolidate here, might consolidate under the high here. But this is definitely one we should be, this should be on everyone's, momentum trading. This should be on your watch list for sure. Just the strength there is just showing real strength there. Number two there was Bluglass. That's sort of, it's a bit impulsive there. Some decent volume through there. Drying up on the pullbacks there, which is okay. So that's sort of constructive. Probably a little small for me. VUX number 3. Well, this is sort of interesting there. Some pretty good volume there. I mean, even just looking through there, Chris, that after that pullback there, we saw some super volume, decent volume up here. Then sometimes you see this. You see a big sell here, which is kind of like today, where sort of can be like a mini exhaustion as well. So basically the buyers push it up early and then the sellers sort of finish, and you can get a bar like this. So that looks probably pretty bearish when you see that. But then it's what follows is important. So what came after that is that the volume did drop. There's a little bit of volume the first couple of days, but then it just dried up, and the shares didn't really come back that much.
Kind of sitting within the range of that last strong candle up, isn't it?
Yeah, it does. Because I used to sort of see this bar, and that would concern me. But now I see that bar, and I think, okay, it's not perfect, but I've seen this before. If the next sort of 4 or 5 days, no selling comes in, it can still go again. So it's important to sort of recognise that technically as well, just when you sort of see that sort of bar. I've just seen a lot of stocks do this recently, just have that single bar there. So, it's just the first day of selling, a little bit of profit taking there, but it's what happens after that. So whether you see follow through or not, or whether you see volume dry up here. So that just sort of dried up here. And then, it's just started to, and then bang, it's sort of gone again. So, just interesting, definitely seen that type of price action bar a few times here recently. So it's just making me a little alert to that. MEI is sort of, this might be the sort of same token here, really, sort of run up pretty solid volume there, maybe 1 bar of volume. This one maybe end up being 2, so it might have been a bit more negative. But then we've sort of held pretty tight here. The volume's dried up again. And then what are we're trying to do? Trying to poke through here again. So it's okay to have these little consolidations there, but you want to see this volume dry up here. That's when you see it sort of struggling to sell off here, not go down. And then,
Is that when it's in the high and tight flag type category?
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, that's, what have we gone from 2 cents to 17 there? So well and truly gone out 80-90%, which is, I know some people use sort of 80, some people use 100%, but yeah. I think anything over a sort of 80% move is pretty decent, and then you're getting a
tight consolidation, well and truly at the top end of the range.
That's right. Then those are things you sort of got to watch for. You definitely sort of see them pop out here. What else did I sort of see in there?
We'll put a link in the bottom for the high and tight flag, where we've been through that in more detail.
Yeah. CNTM's sort of had one there. It's only 1 day up here, sort of, some big sort of spikes on these sort of small ones, so a bit hard to trade those things there. Helloworld, obviously that, travel sector's pretty robust there. So possibly a bit late here, but the reason I'm sort of saying it's late here is we've run up here pretty much like that, it's not a heavily traded stock here. Obviously we've got this sort of big price bar here, but normally, like, these volume bars were pretty heavy at the time, so they've sort of gone up there, and these were probably as heavy as well. So that so again, these sort of heavier volume bars in here, and then sort of slight ones here. The last thing on the chart here, you're starting to see these. We've seen sort of 3 big clumps here, like coming at the end here. That would make me a little nervous here, Chris, just because those are the sort of 3 big bars here. Getting up here after pretty, maybe a 1, 2, 3, 4 sort of, pushes there. So,
and it's near the previous high where there may be resistance.
So that might just concern me that we're getting a little bit of distribution there, just because we're sort of, that volume is sort of coming late here. So look, they can run, as we know that these leaders can continue to lead, but I like to sort of see a healthier mix of volume there. When I see a big chunk come in at the end, that does worry me a little bit there. LDR was sort of one that I thought was producing there, just because it had a pretty decent pop. Has sort of come back here, probably a little deeper than you'd like here, but I've seen quite a few of these here recently sort of do this pop, come back like this, sort of congest a little bit, and then have a leg up in it. And may not go through to a new high, might only come back in the range there, but you can get a little move in there. It's not the best signal. I've just seen a few of those come off here. BAS is sort of in a bit of a tightening phase at the moment, so had a nice pop here, nice little VCP in here, and then once we closed above that, once we sort of closed above that, sort of high there, so that was starting to sort of show signs there. So it's almost like your little cup and handle again there as well, Chris. Good little setup for like a smaller stock here, but yeah, I mean, this bar here, I think we saw, I think there's still quite low volume there, but, you know, it's still looking pretty robust there. And then you've got a big bar and gap up there. And then this thing sort of, you know, had a pretty good run here. Since then, the volume's pretty light on the first pullback. So, okay, not too much selling going on there. Had a nice rally again, bit of a congestion, bit of a rally again, bit of a congestion there. So this thing's holding pretty tight here. So definitely want to keep an eye on there. So far, not seeing any sort of aggressive selling at all there. So although, you know, it looks a bit long in the tooth there, the one thing I know is that some of these leaders, if there's no selling really comes in, they can go again. So yeah, BAT is one I've put on my watch list there just because of that volume, the big chunky volume there through there. So
huge volume down there on that breakout, especially when it's been down there for quite some time.
Yeah, so I had sort of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days of solid volume out of that low. That's really, you know, when you see that, that's really bullish. Coming out of that sort of stuff there, and then, you know, but then we've sort of seen a few more days up here. So look, this might have a little bit of a pause here, but that is really, you know, constructive volume. That's probably, you know, as chunky as we've seen here. So yeah, that's pretty interesting there. So that definitely tells me to go and investigate that stock a bit more. And yeah, so that looks all right. ETR is another one. Okay, volume in there. A bit of a deep correction there. A bit more volume on the downward move, and a bit deep as well. So not quite as exciting as some of the others, but okay. Yeah, C is okay. A bit lightly traded there, but kind of constructive. And the last one was LYL, which is, well, it's had a pretty decent move, this one, this Lycopodium. So again, it's sort of, you know, oftentimes you're seeing this sort of, you know, if you see a stock sort of have a decent move and then it just tightens up here. So you can see here, the whole thing just stayed in the tight band here for such a long period of time. And then once we break out of that, then we're going here. So this is sort of my, you know, this is sort of my, one thing I've still been trying to work on is this little, what I call my little B wave break. So once these sort of go through the little consolidation pattern here where it's a VCP, once they break above the sort of old swing high, so probably, you know, breaking here first.
So that horizontal line that you're going on, can you move the horizontal line to where your B wave would be?
Just because that's the first, that sort of December high is the last little swing high. So breaking above that is constructive to me. And then breaking above that, you know, that previous sort of high there in November is probably more constructive. We're seeing it nice and tight in there as well. So that's when we're sort of getting confirmed. That's for me when I might be sort of adding to sort of things as well. I want to see that. So, but just when you see this really tight constructive, it's like moving up into sort of, you know, moving up strongly and you know, and then you sort of go through a bit of a sideways pause and then you're breaking out again. Yeah, it was interesting. I was listening to one of the Trader Line podcasts this morning, and it was actually, I was thinking about you, Chris. Actually, it was sort of like, it was talking about the 50 and the 21 and the 10-day moving average. So when they culminate and they all come within 1 to 3% of each other,
they will compress.
They all compress, and then, you know, so basically he looks for, you know, does a scan on all stocks, like some leading stocks, so basically stocks in your high momentum list that have got this compression, and scan for the stocks that are where those moving averages have all sort of tightened up and are within sort of 1 to 3% of each other, and that can sort of give you some really good signals. And I thought, well, that's a really good idea, because that's sort of, you're trading those relative strength stocks. If that signal will sort of tell you all the ones that have tightened up, and then you're looking for it to push through. So it might be sort of something for us to investigate a bit more, actually, personally. But yeah,
well,
I really like.
We do have some algorithms we're working on that help us filter the similar kind of things. Yeah.
But even like producing lists of that every sort of, I'm not sure if it can be done every day, every week or something, but that would be a really interesting list there actually as well. So there's just sort of stocks that are sort of tightening up here. And then, once we crack on here, and just once they kick out of these ranges, they can sort of keep going here. So, so that was the quarterly list. On the daily list there,
The weekly, so the ones that have had the better.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So on the so quarterly then to weekly. So the weekly list there. So MTM was sort of number one. It's obviously had a big jump for a small one. New Century Zinc's obviously had a big of a move here on a takeover, so hard to trade that one. ICG number three had a bit of a pop here on some volume there. Probably a little small for me, but definitely warrants some exploration there, just the fact that volume is so large. So I thought that was interesting. I did see this service stream, actually, SSM. I was watching this sort of just thinking, so I saw that big sort of wide bar and then it pulled back and dried up here. It's just such a strong downtrend there. You sort of want to sort of see, you want to sort of see it go above, a swing high there. So it did break through that on the 22nd and some decent volume as well. So that's probably the first day I might even, I might look at sort of something like that. But yeah, that's sort of interesting there on the daily. TIY's had a bit of a pop there, but there's a lot of headway in front of that one there. So it's just going to struggle to get through some of those. I thought APE EGAs looked really interesting there. I mean, I had this on my weekly report there on Tuesday, Chris, just because sort of like this was a nice and tight, little triangular here, little sort of descending wedge, sort of tightening up pattern here. But the thing we saw last week was we saw some really good volume coming in last week off that low. So sort of, again, showed its hand early. Someone knew the result was going to be pretty good, and yeah, now we got follow through there and then just breaking above there. So again, if you're looking here, it's a little B wave. That would, this is when you sort of program sort of stuff in as well. So, if you can't watch it every day, you'd say, okay, our high was 1193, 1190, 1181. So 1193. So if we break 1193, that's a good sign. Basically, that's sort of, it's finally broke. Because sometimes you sort of see there's lower high, lower high, lower high, and they can just keep going. So you kind of do need to see a bit of a break of that before you can before you look at it. But if I saw volume coming in, which we did see, and then if it broke above 1193, you can go and program in. If the stock trades above 1193, buy it up to a limit of 1196, 1197, even if you're not watching it, program it in. You can put your program a stop in there, 5% below and a target, I don't know, 15, 20% above. You can do these things even if you're not watching the screen. You can kind of program in. So they may not get activated. You just look at them every sort of day at the end of the day, make sure but even if you sort of can't watch it there, you can still program these sort of trades in there. So that's sort of one. And look at that, it's really took it off, gap through, and
Just to clarify, you were long this trade before that broke out, and that was your report, which is the Tuesday report you're talking about.
Yeah, I just think it just sort of showed its hand. I just think this was already looking pretty bullish before the it's a good sort of setup technically. I know sometimes reporting season can
get some bunk steers.
Yeah, you can get it. But I think it's normally sort of if they're running the other way. So it's like if they've been running up, you think, oh, yeah, this is going to keep going. Then you buy it, and then a report comes out, and it's sort of like you almost price for perfection. So whereas it's been running down, you think, oh, it just starts to turn up beforehand, or starts to turn down. Combank had been running up so high. I find that stock there, if you go back and look at the history of it, it would basically sort of find a high a few days before the report. How it trades up into the report, it normally goes the other way, and it'll normally sort of a few days beforehand, it'll start to sort of turn, whereas something like Woolworths does exactly the same as well. It tends to sort of move about 4 or 5 days in advance. So someone like, it's almost like that is, leaked. Like someone knows a week before it, what's going on. Whereas normally they only move a few days beforehand. But just interesting little phenomenon there. If you go back and sort of study the stocks, you can sort of see that within there. So APE EGA was interesting. I thought Australian Clinical Labs also number 10 on the list. That's had a nice little pop here as well. So this has had a pretty decent decline here all the way down. And now we've sort of popped through the 50-day moving average on pretty good volume. So I do like the look of this here. I like the sector. I think we saw Sonic Healthcare there last week go all the way down and then pop up here. So it's, think Australian Clinical Labs looks pretty good as well here. So again, sort of same sector here. So I think any sort of consolidation back in the range, sort of, definitely stocks to be looking at here. So I thought they look pretty good. ADN, little small here. Let's see what we got there. XZ, bit of a tough code.
Easy on the keyboard though.
Yeah, bit of a pop there. It's a big volume through there. Worthy of investigation there. Yeah, bit of a hard one there. JLG, I thought this was pretty interesting as well. This was sort of, I did sort of notice, I was watching this low here. The thing that sort of caught my eye was more the weekly, just because this has sort of had this ABC, Chris, and there's a lot of symmetry in there, the sort of same sort of length of time in the correction there. So nice, classic sort of come back to a margin new low as well, like a little bit of a false breakdown here. But the thing we sort of saw that exhaustive sort of volume there. We saw some pretty good volume there last week. So again, showing its sort of hand earlier there. Then we, sort of 1, 2, 3 bars up here, maybe a fourth bar, and then 1, 2, 3 here. No selling in here, and then pop here. So again, this looks pretty good as well. I mean, John Lake's pretty decent business there. Still a bit of growth in this business. Market will be looking for sort of stuff that's still got a reasonable growth outlook. So I thought that looks pretty good as well. Just, sometimes when they pop here, you just got to, wait for a little bit of a consolidation. CXL was on the list as well. It's okay here. It's just, got a high low, second high low. So sort of this thing sort of building here. Nothing too exciting, but solid. HCH, like Chili. Well, it's sort of interesting there, just because it's sort of reasonably impulsive, some okay volume there, and then kind of gone sideways for a while here. Haven't broken a swing high here yet, but a bit of volume through here, so definitely one to keep an eye on from there. ZEO, small one there, but maybe a little too small, but again, impulsive move, bit of a corrective move back, bit of an impulsive move today here, so that's sort of definitely caught my eye. MAQ, which is a bit of a growth stock here, hard to trade there, just not the most liquid stock at Macquarie Telecom, but a bit of a growth stock as well. I think it might have even been, I don't know, false break just a high low here, but yeah, definitely when it moves around a bit. BC8, all these different codes up. So this is interesting to me. I think this looks pretty constructive there. That's sort of reasonably impulsive, and this is corrective here. The big issue, the reason I wouldn't trade this is that see how it's sort of gone up here on very, very light volume, and then all through the sell here, we've seen the volumes elevated.
That's a concern.
Yeah, so it's almost sort of pumped up on no volume, and then look at all the sellings coming here.
It's almost like looking at that chart, there's probably popped on news, went into trading hold for 2 days, and the selling really came in after the hold.
Yeah, so might have done some sort of raising here or something. That's maybe why the volumes are elevated. Might have, I didn't check here, but I'm guessing maybe a placement of some sort, and then get stock at a lower value, and that caused the trading here. But yeah, so that's not what you don't want to see. That you want to see go up a good volume and go down a light volume. That's the opposite to what you want to see there. Just a couple that I did see, Chris. I know this XRF was sort of one that I saw was in a pretty decent uptrend as well. I did sort of see this little consolidation, and then all this volume again. It's all that 1, 2, 3 little cluster again. So yeah, there's some stocks out there that have been running here for a while here. Even something like Tyro I thought was pretty interesting as well. Actually, not that I like Tyro, but possible sort of cup and handle developing here as well. Look at that.
Yeah, you can also
there.
Draw a big VCP there.
Yeah, potentially there. Yeah, it's probably a little.
The first one's very drawn out.
Yeah, I just think this has there's just that volume there was interesting, and then we've sort of dried up again here. So it's just got that appearance there. So yeah, it's not really a sort of sector I don't really like all of those buy now, pay later, but obviously Tyro's probably slightly different, maybe a bit more of a real business than some of the others. But yeah, I thought that looked pretty interesting. So there's a couple that looked all right, but yeah, we're starting to see some of these stocks getting up and momentum scores. They're starting to, so those are sort of stocks we got to look at the leaders here. Stocks that have sort of found a higher low in October. Stocks that have been running through, because history tells us that when a new bull market, when a end of a bearish phase ends and a new bull market starts, is that you're going to have a new leadership group. So it'd be a new bunch of leaders there. So the stocks that have made sort of higher lows when the market finds a low, stocks that have had pretty good moves showing relative strength, and the stocks that are sort of trending up and leading here, those are the stocks we're looking at. So that IPG, that is, I was sort of taken back when I saw that. I thought, wow, that is showing real strength there. It sort of kind of reminds me of the sort of CUV, like Clinical sort of had that really strong move as well. So, I think it's sort of got, kind of got leadership qualities there. So, I think it looks pretty interesting.
Well, that's a good breakdown of the list, both the quarterly momentum and then picking the eyes out of the weekly movements. They're the ones who have had the best change in momentum score for that being on the launch pad. But that is a great chart you've got there on screen. That's just super textbook, good market leader, good consolidation under the high, and then retests sort of the previous high and gets thrown back up. So that inability to close lower into that sort of October, November high congestion. That's super positive.
Yeah, that's basically the market low is early October, and that sort of stock's been trending up into there and just having a bit of a pause sideways move here. So again, if you're looking at relative strength there, you would have been that stock would have been showing relative strength at the time. And looking at 52-week highs or looking at 1 year highs and stuff, they would have been pretty close to that as well. So yeah, so just good signs there.
Definitely. Well, that's a good breakdown, and we say thank you very much, Gary Glover from Novus Capital.
Thanks, Chris.
Gary's mentioned his Tuesday report. That's on the right-hand side if you want to see that whole playlist. And then also on the right-hand side is the breakdown of the different strategies, high-tight flags, springs, false breaks, volatility contraction patterns, and also things like the 40s and 70s inflation and pulling that apart with the analysis that Gary's done. Also, left-hand side, there's Gary's Twitter handle if you want to follow him there.